Welcome to the Daily Memphian's Developing Memphis seminar. I'm Eric Barnes, CEO of the Daily Memphian, and thank you for joining us in this virtual format. Many of you maybe know that we normally in the past have done these live, usually at the Brooks Museum in the nice auditorium down there, and had wine afterward. None of that is happening today, but we are very pleased to have you all joining us and to have three speakers focusing on a range of really big, interesting projects going forward despite the pandemic. And we'll talk about those projects and just what it's like to work in this strange environment. Those three speakers, and I'll introduce them more fully later, but are Paul Young, talking about the fairgrounds, now known as Liberty Park. Rick Smith will be talking about the transformation of Poplar Plaza. And Archie Willis will be talking about South City and the massive transformation of that part of downtown that's going on. You can ask questions as you listen to the various presentations, and we'll answer those questions at the end in a question and answer. If you're watching on YouTube, you can just, in the comment section on YouTube, just put a question there and I'll get it to the speakers. Or if you're watching on the Daily Memphian site, if you click on the article in which the video is embedded, so the headline that says how construction development continue, at the bottom of that article, there is a comment section. And if you go into that comment section, put any questions you have there, any comments, and I will get them. And when we get to the Q&A, we'll talk about those. Just a reminder, this is part of a series of seminars that we do every year. Last month, we did a small business seminar, very different small businesses that talked about how they dealt with, are dealing with, and adapting to the pandemic. That video is on our YouTube channel, or there's a link to it within the article that this video is embedded to. And next month, December 5th, in fact, our commercial real estate review seminar, we'll be doing that again virtually. And there's information on that again within the article where this video is embedded. So please join us for those. There's no cost at all. And we hope to have you there. We want to start though, before we get to our first speaker, we've got a couple of sponsors today and we appreciate them immensely for making this possible. The first messages are one from Independent Bank and one from Bass, Berry & Sims.
Hi there, I'm Susan Stevenson with Independent Bank. We know that Memphis is bustling with opportunities to build and to grow, and iBank is proud to be part of this dynamic community. Whether you're building retail centers, industrial complexes, office buildings, hotels, or homes, you need an experienced and dependable partner, and we're here to help. We're investing our time and our resources in our community every day. Please consider partnering with iBank. We know you'll be glad you did. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Bass, Berry & Sims is pleased to be a sponsor of the Developing Memphis seminar. Our law firm has been serving Tennessee for nearly a century, and it has been a privilege for our real estate attorneys to assist our clients in continuing to develop the great city of Memphis. We represent a variety of parties in all aspects of real estate transactions, and you're currently viewing a few of the recent developments where we have served as trusted legal counsel. For more information on our services and experience, please visit our website.
And again, thanks to our sponsors for supporting this seminar. Our first speaker today is Paul Young. Paul is Director of Housing and Community Development for the City of Memphis. He's going to be talking today primarily about the fairgrounds redevelopment, now known as Liberty Park. He is involved in a wide range of developments throughout Memphis, though, and we'll certainly in the Q&A talk to him about other things that the city and his specific office has going on. But Paul, I'm going to let you unmute yourself and share your presentation. And first and foremost, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here, and I'm going to now share my screen and pull up this presentation. And I'm going to go relatively quickly and tell you a little bit about Liberty Park, give the public an update. I know there's been a few things out in the media over the last couple of weeks, but this is an exciting opportunity, so glad to talk to you all about it today. And as Eric mentioned, this is now Liberty Park. I have to train myself to say Liberty Park instead of Fairgrounds because it's been known as the Fairgrounds as long as any of us can remember. But we wanted to develop that name just to really unify the site. And I'm going to run through this presentation relatively quickly. Many of you know where Fairgrounds is. We've been using this tagline, Central to Everything. It's kind of a play on the fact that it's right off Central Avenue, as well as the fact that it's right in the heart of the city. And so felt like that really represents what the Fairgrounds and Liberty Park means to this community. And just to remind everybody, all of the existing assets that are on the site, Liberty Bowl is already there. Tiger Lane is an investment that the city made back in 2010. The Kroc Center is there. Children's Museum, Maxine Smith STEAM Academy and Middle College, High School are on the site. And then there are the two additional components, which we'll talk about today, which is the mixed-use development, which is on the northern portion of the site, near where the existing track and green space is, as well as the sports and events complex, which will be located where Liberty Land formerly was. And also the Coliseum is still on the site, and we still look forward to trying to find an active use for that structure. So here's an image that just shows you what the site will look like right after a Tigers win, when the fireworks are going off. As you can see, there are plans for soccer fields just adjacent to the sports and events complex. And then you can see in the distance the private development opportunity, the mixed-use development on the northern portion of the site. Just to dig a little bit deeper into the proposed site plan, you've heard a little bit of talk about us looking for a family entertainment center, which would be located here. And it would be coupled with commercial development on the lower floors with, the red represents commercial, the purple represents hotel. As you know, we have announced that we do have a hospitality partner, which has committed to build at least 80 rooms, but as many as 200. So he's starting off with a 120 room hotel. And so on the upper floors of these structures are residential units on this side and offices on this side. Just going down to the bottom portion of the site, this is where the sports and events complex will be located, which we'll dig into a little bit in the next slides. So just to give some images, these next slides are just images, so they'll go relatively quickly to give you a sense of how it would feel. This is the inside. So there are essentially two buildings that are merged together. On one side, it's essentially a concrete slab, and it can accommodate all types of different events. This one is set up for wrestling matches. We also have the ability to bring in an indoor track. At one point in time, we had talked about having a track that had the mechanical arms that lift up the tracks and the edges and all of those good things. But we found that we wanted to have as much versatility as possible on this side of the building. And so we opted for more of a temporary track that can be removed and placed in when we have those competitions during track season. On the other side are hard courts. There are 8 basketball courts that would be included there, as well as in the foyer area, some open space, as well as a cafe. And here are some of the statistics on the structure: 227,000 square feet. I mentioned the hard court pavilion, and then that concrete slab that I referenced is the events pavilion, cafe and concessions, those outdoor turf fields, and then we're also looking at a playground pavilion as well outside of that structure. Just to dig into some of the mixed use development, here are some images. We wanted to feel like a destination, an important place in the city. We wanted to be complementary to some of our existing nodes, like Cooper Young, Overton Square, Highland Row. Those are already existing nodes in our community, and so we want to complement those with a family-friendly area that would really be special for this community. And so here are a couple of other images. And here's another image. I just highlight that, part of what we want to do is make sure that you feel the connection between the sports and event center and this mixed use area. And so adding this public pavilion or this public space, which will kind of sit at the corner of Early Maxwell, and I forget the name of this street, but the street that's right at Liberty Bowl is here. So it runs straight through the site. So adding this public space here really helps us add some activation on that corner. Here are some of the statistics. It's about 18 acres on that site, so it's two development parcels. There's a 90,000 square feet for family entertainment, commercial office space mentioned on top of those, commercial spaces, retail and dining opportunities, as well as a hotel, as well as the multifamily, 100 to 150 units. So just to quickly get into the timeline, we were really looking at closing actually in October of this year. And obviously when the pandemic hit, we wanted to slow down a little bit and just really make sure we were looking at the market. We still feel pretty confident about this schedule, given some of the commitments that we're starting to see from some of our partners. And so we are looking at a closing on the tourism development zone bonds, which will finance the large part of this, and doing that in the spring, which would kick off construction. And so I'm thinking late April, May for that timeline, which would leave us with a fall of 22 opening of the first phase of the retail, as well as the opening of the sports and events complex. And so I intentionally didn't get into too deep into the financing aspect, but I'd be glad to talk about that when we get to Q&A. Obviously, tourism development zone bonds, which were approved by the state, we now have the ability to do tourism development zone bonds in the fairgrounds area. And so we are looking to use those to finance a large portion of this development, particularly the sports and events complex, with the private area being mostly funded by private actors. So we'll talk about that some more in just a moment. And I'll turn it back to you, Eric.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. That is just on not objectively speaking, pretty exciting to see. How much has changed? You talked about a delay in the timing. Before we go to our next speaker, you talked about a delay in the timing because of COVID, I assume, and just all the uncertainty. How much more has changed in terms of the mix of, if at all, the mix of tenants you're looking at? We see all those public spaces, and it's so foreign to us now to have all those crowds together and everyone in the sports places. But again, COVID won't be with us forever, we assume. But what else has changed?
Yeah, I mean, really, the way we've thought about this is our anticipated timeline is well beyond any anticipated timelines for the vaccine. So we still feel strongly, and we've been having a lot of conversations with people that are working in this youth sports industry, because obviously the sports and events complex is built on the premise of bringing people together. So we really wanted to make sure that we were hearing from experts on that, and everything that we've heard leads us to believe that we're still moving in the right direction. And we all know, as you said, that at some point COVID will end. And so we want to be poised for our community to take advantage of that when the time is right. And so we still feel like we're well poised to have an impact. With regards to the commercial, retail, and all of those entities, we still have had good demand. There are some groups that have reached out to us about the Family Entertainment Center, and we look to make some announcements about that in the coming weeks and months. So we still feel pretty confident that it's going to be a great project.
Okay. Well, we'll have more questions for Paul after the other two speakers. And again, as I said at the beginning, but in case you joined us late, you can ask questions by either in the, if you're watching this on YouTube, there's a comment section there. Just put a question in there and I'll get that to Paul or any of the speakers. And if you're watching it on the Daily Memphian site, and you go to the article in which the video is embedded, scroll to the bottom, there's a comment section there, and you can put questions in there. Next up is Rick Smith, who is Director of Property Management at Bernard Properties. They have announced a $56 million renovation and just really, truly a transformation of really one of the most visible shopping centers and one of the most highly trafficked corners, at least in the city limits of Memphis, Poplar Plaza. And Rick, do we have you there? We'll get you in on this Zoom here. There you are.
I am here.
Thank you for being here. I'm going to let you share your screen and walk through. And again, folks can ask questions on the site. Thank you for being here, Rick.
Sounds great. I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about Poplar Plaza. We agree, Eric, that it's an important piece of real estate, a landmark in our city, and the Foote family really feels it a privilege to own it because of that. Specifically, I am trying to swap the screen. There it works. Get to talk about the future. We'll look back for just a few minutes and then look at what we are planning on the horizon and going forward. I do want to thank the Daily News just for the opportunity to talk about it. We appreciate feedback and the opportunity to get it out there, and we've gotten a ton of support and we're grateful for it. And I do thank the sponsors for making this happen. If I was a good NASCAR driver, I would be able to name all of them right here, but I haven't done that, so my apologies. But on behalf of Foote, we do thank you for the opportunity to talk about it. A little bit about Foote Properties. Some folks know us, some don't. It is a third-generation real estate company. Our home office is in Boston. We have regional offices here in Memphis and then one in Portland, Maine. It was started by Murray Foote. He passed it on to his son, Bill Foote, and now Bill, although still active, has passed the company on to his son, Todd Foote, who is our current CEO. They have been in business over 7 decades, and their real estate portfolio at times have gone across 12 states. And in addition to Poplar Plaza, we have done other projects in Memphis. We have owned and operated in downtown. We did a redevelopment there off of Fort Square. We owned a property and redeveloped it in Germantown in what is known as the Super Block. We still own the Whitehaven Plaza out in Whitehaven on Elvis Presley Boulevard, which is considered Poplar Plaza's sister property. So a few things, just looking back about Poplar Plaza, the first 30 years of its life was really a very successful, terrific time in the life of the property. A few quick facts. It was the first post-war suburban shopping center built in Tennessee. Some people say this side of the Mississippi in the country. This is fun. It was built in 4 phases between 48 and 59 for $5 million. How about those investment dollars for the real estate folks out there back in 1948? The very first phase was what they call the Lowenstein's East building. It's pictured there to the right in that rendering. And that is the building that we are going to be removing and replace it with the mixed-use concept. After all the phases were completed, it was 550,000 square feet of retail shopping center. And we always get questions about the theater. It opened officially May 1st of 1952. One thing I want to point out here to the right in this rendering, if you look closely, you'll recognize the tower feature, the Poplar Highland corner feature that most of us, maybe all of us, are familiar with. But note in this rendering, it is a single-story building. It was actually drawn up to add the upper floor at a later date, but as it turned out, they built it all at one time, and Lowenstein's occupied the entire building. Here's a picture of looking westward at the Plaza Theater. It's got Walgreens there, Penny's there. Another old picture of McCrory's, which is what is now El Porton. I like all the pictures we have with the older vehicles. Maybe some of y'all still have a few of those. And we always like to mention ghouls. The whole ghouls concept started at Poplar Plaza. The father started it up here at this location. They stayed in that location for years and years, and now are still with us. They've moved out front to the corner of Prescott and Poplar. I believe they've been in the shopping center since 1953, if I remember correctly. So then we move forward for the next 20 years or so in the 80s and 90s, and things were different and some changes came into being. After all those years of success, some challenges came our way. centered around Dillard's leaving and leaving that large building vacant. That affected other tenants. Some of them struggled, some of them closed, some of them left. And for the first time in its life, it reached over 30% of vacancy. Fennard's response to that was to subdivide the ground floor of the Dillard building into smaller boxes. The large department stores were already losing traction. And in doing so, they attracted some national tenants, Petco, Party City, Blockbuster Music, and the French Riviera Spa to 36,000 square feet in the basement. And with that, the center enjoyed another long stretch of great success with really high occupancy, constantly above 95%, and sometimes at 99%. And during that time, Kroger expanded a third time. Here's a few pictures. This is when Dillard's occupied that entire building and our lovely pylon sign during that time. That faded away, and we did the subdivide, which we talked about with Party City, Petco, and then a various chain of music stores. It was first Blockbuster Music, then went to Turtles, and we ended with Spin Street. So that took us to the 2000s, and we were still enjoying great success during that. All the high occupancy, we had good tenancy, good functionality there. People were still reading books. That's the inside of Bookstore that was well stocked and how it looked after the theater was taken out, but the screen was still there. People were still playing Laser Quest and those type things. And we were moving along pretty good. We had everything going well and even came through the 2008 still with our tenants out front, still with the Spin Street and that building fully occupied. And then Kroger actually expanded for a fourth time in the shopping center. We went into a project that relocated 9 tenants, knocked down these 2 buildings so that Kroger could come out of this box and it would eventually be demoed and go into a box about twice their size. We did that with Kroger and all the other tenants operating continuously, even though we took the majority of this parking lot. And just for the real estate folks out there, if you don't believe me, that is the parking lot while all of that was going on. And right over there is the front door of Kroger. So that then produced a new Kroger, but things were changing in the real estate world. And now we're headed to something new, a needed redevelopment for the shopping center, and what we hope to be a return to the roaring 20s. I hope that for all of us, by the way. So here is Poplar Plaza as you know it, with the new Kroger and the old Kroger demoed. But here is our corner, and why we love supporting the Tigers, of which I am a graduate. We have this big front door of our shopping center vacant. And so about 2 years ago, we started scratching our head about the future of retail, e-commerce, and even recently added to that, of course, COVID. We wondered if leasing could drive us through this, if we could lease our way out of it with a re-tenanting effort. We looked at repurposing the building and even worked with the group from Crosstown, but we couldn't come up with enough units to make that work. So we decided to go to a total redevelopment, and the phase 1 of it focuses on this area here, this being the Lowenstein's building, this being the Mr. Hat's old Tommy Bronson building, and working with HBG. That is what we desire to put there. We continue to try to refine this, certainly working on budget and functionality. For example, we will not be putting the pool right here on this second floor. And we do have versions of this building where this wing is either here or here. So we are trying to refine that and narrow it down to the best use and purpose. To give you a few facts of it, and this is looking at the project from within the shopping center, from Kroger's front door, if you will. It is a 6-story structure, approximately 250 apartments, around 20,000 square foot of retail on the ground floor. There will be structured parking. Our current cost of construction, and yes, we're still whittling, but $46 million. We have a project cost of $56 million. I've mentioned that our architect is HBG, to say that correctly. The city has already awarded a pilot to the project. We are working with the city on the Innovation Corridor project. We are going to be a main stop on that, particularly at this east end loop of that. We are wanting to further with this project our relationship with the university. Not that we had a bad one, but we are working with them to create a more worn path between Poplar Plaza and the university. We have neglected that to a certain extent and want to correct it. And while we are out to improve the shopping center, we do believe the neighborhood benefits from this significantly. Here's where we are as we sit today, our in-progress to-do list. We have to move and relocate 2 national tenants, 3 local tenants, and up to 5 regional tenants. I say up to 5 because depending on where the nationals land, we may or may not have to relocate all 5 of those. We have to complete our design elements with Danny Valley over there at HPG and move to CDs. We are very close to that. And then, as Paul referenced as well, we have some financing to complete for the project as well as the refinance of the shopping center. The last thing I'll mention, our time frame, we believe we can deal with these tenants, the first bullet point there, in the first and second quarter. We are already well in the conversation with all of them and have the wrecking ball swinging sometime midsummer of next year. That's our goal. It is a little bit lofty one in our current environment, but that's our goal. And again, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to share. I look forward to any questions. And if anybody knows where this sculpture is that used to be on top of the Bookstore Tower, we are looking for it. So Eric, I hope you don't mind that I took the opportunity to take advantage of that.
I don't mind at all. Wait, leave that up for a second. That's okay. What was it stolen? What, I mean, where did it? What in what sense are you looking for it?
Well, there's several elements, and that was the largest one. I don't think it was stolen. I believe it ended up over at the university at some point in time in front of the business center, and then when they did all the new stuff, we don't know where it went. That was all before I got here, but what we would kind of like to do is try to have that as a feature somehow or another with the redevelopment, whether it's inside the lobby or what have you. We don't know, but we can't find it.
Well, good. We will try to we will have these presentations on the site after the fact. Obviously the video will be around, so we'll do everything within our power, Rick, to help you find that sculpture. I do have a question for you, but we'll wait. I think we'll go to Archie. Well, one thing, I want to do one quick question before we go to Archie, which is, sure. Again, the COVID impact, besides the changing nature of retail, which you were sort of ahead of that and before this started, but in terms of financing, in terms of construction costs, the money side of this, how much has that changed in this COVID time?
Well, it's changed a whole lot, Eric, and it's just how the lenders approach it. We do have people that now, at this point, are willing to converse with us. There was a while when they weren't, and it was the combination of what COVID was doing to the lending industry, but its effect on top of e-commerce, on top of how Gen Z shops, et cetera, on retail shopping centers. We were second only to hospitality. They wouldn't touch a conversation about hospitality and then retail centers. But strong centers, and we still think location speaks everything for Poplar Plaza. They're sitting down with us, and we've made some significant advances on terms.
All right. Well, and again, thank you. We'll come back to more questions with Rick about Poplar Plaza. Again, you can ask questions if you're on YouTube. Go and just make a comment on the YouTube below the video. If you're watching on the site, you just go to the article in which the video is embedded. You click on the headline and scroll to the bottom. You'll see 5-6 comments that have already been questions that have been asked in the comment section. So, but next up is Archie Willis, founder, president of Comcap Partners. Archie has been at the heart of just what can only be called a massive, almost epic transformation of public housing in Memphis over a decade or 2 decades now. South City is more than, it is many, many things. Archie's going to be talking about that. We are pleased to have him here. Archie, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And you can go ahead and share your screen, and I'm going to let you go.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Let me get started. All right. There we go. So let me start with, and I'm going to read this. I won't read a lot of information on my presentation, but I think it's important just to reiterate and emphasize the vision because it is really at the core of what we're doing and why we're doing it. The vision for South City is to create a neighborhood that is a sustainable place of choice where children and families can live and thrive in a safe and healthy environment. And when we talk about the geography of South City, unlike both Poplar Plaza and the Liberty Park, where they're dealing with a fairly smaller defined set of real estate, we're really dealing with a much larger area. And the boundaries are outlined here, and roughly we have Union to the north, Walnut to the east, a Crump or the railroad right away to the south, and a little bit of Kansas in front to the west. And these boundaries were the original boundaries that were submitted to HUD for the Choice Neighborhoods Initiative application. And there's a little bit of logic there, and also there's a bit of gerrymandering, if you will, because we had to meet certain demographic thresholds to make the grant competitive. What I do want to point out, though, is and this map, you probably can't really read this, and it's a bit outdated. DMC did this for us, and we didn't have a chance to get it updated. But I can tell you all of the boxes in yellow and green are either planned or under construction, and all of these actually started after we got the CNI grant. So obviously we can't attribute all of this to what we're doing, but we do think the core of what we're doing in this South City area is certainly an important factor that enables other development to occur in the South City boundaries. The grant itself is a HUD-funded grant, 5 years before we have to spend all the money. $29.7 million went to MHA and the city. The city matched that with a $30 million commitment of CIP funds. MHA provided additional funding. And the big number, over $145 million of private sector financing, which is a combination of traditional debt as well as equity from low-income housing tax credits, and then an additional $8 million of other funds. And there are 3 major components to the CNI, people, neighborhood, and housing. And that's an important factor because it's more than just redeveloping housing, and you alluded to that in your opening comments, Eric. The people part is, actually number one, that's at the heart and soul of it, and that is doing the work to help the lives of the folks that were former residents of the Foote Homes development, and hopefully many of them will return to the project as it gets developed over time. The people component is being led by Urban Strategies, which is a nonprofit organization based in St. Louis. The housing is being led by McCormick, Barron Salazar, which is a private developer. They're also headquartered in St. Louis, and actually they created Urban Strategies to help them with their work throughout the country as they deal with and work with the residents of the former public housing sites. And we're also their local development partner. And then a neighborhood components led by Paul and his team at HCD, and we're also working directly with them. Just a quick pie chart that kind of shows you how the funding is allocated. Of course, the bulk of the funding, the majority of it is going toward housing, 182 million. The neighborhood investment, 23 million. People investment, 18.5 million, and then other 3.3 million. So the housing strategy is to really create a first-class, high-quality community. It will be privately managed by McCormick Barron's Management Company, and it will have a nice management building, which I'll show you pictures of in a few minutes. We integrate other neighborhood initiatives like Explore Bike Share, and there's green space, and there will also be public art in a couple of places throughout the community. The financial viability makes it affordable to a diverse group, and it is mixed income. So it's a combination of, and I'll show you the breakdown in a few slides, a combination of housing that's subsidized through the Housing Authority, housing that's subsidized through the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, and market rate, which simply means there are no restrictions on income or rent levels. And one fact we certainly like to point out is all of the units are designed to the same market rate standard. So this development will have the same kind of amenities and be comparable in terms of the interior finishes, et cetera, as pretty much any other well-done development throughout the city or the county. And of course, it's energy efficient and sustainable. Here's our phasing map. We have completed phases 1 and phases 2. Phase 3 is under construction and it's slated to be completed next fall. And then phase 4, we're actually working literally as I speak to close hopefully in early December. And then phases 5 and 6 will follow in the subsequent years. And if you notice, if you know anything about the site, it's divided by Danny Thomas. So there's an eastern side and a western side. Phases 1 and 2 are on the eastern side. Phases 3 and 4 are on the west. And then we come back to phases 5 and 6 on the east side of the site. Here is the unit mix, which shows you the breakdown of units by each phase. It also shows you the breakdown of units by the subsidy amounts that I mentioned a few slides ago, and shows you the percentage of units that are in each category. Phase 5 will be a senior development, 120 units, and the need for affordable housing for seniors is really it's off the chains here in Memphis and Shelby County. And in each of the Hope 6 developments, we've always had a senior development, and it's always been filled quickly, and they all maintain very long waiting lists. So that's another element that we will be putting forth, and we know there's great need for seniors and quality affordable housing for seniors in our community. The next few slides are just some pictures of the actual development, phase 1. And you can see there's a mixture of different building types. Typically, the unit sizes will be, the number of units will run from 4 to 8 on this side, or maybe 12, depending on the type of units. And then on the right, you can see a couple of shots of the interior finishes. This shows phase 2, and actually we went to a bigger footprint and building print for phase 2, and that was done because of cost considerations, where we have more buildings that have 12 to 16 units. The idea still is to not do traditional garden style apartments that you might find in some of the more suburban areas, but still try to have an urban feel and to have a neighborhood feel with streets and complete streets and blocks and running through the development. The green space you see is a park that will be developed later on. And it was really, we always try to have green space, but this actually is over the storm drainage system that runs through downtown, so we couldn't build on it. So we had to design around it and design it to be a green space feature and park feature for the development. And then the last picture, you see the phase 3, which is currently under construction. Here's our community building, or where the management office is located. And as you can see, its design is a little bit different. It's a lot more modern. And on the right, you can see a couple of shots of the interior, which is really ultra modern. It's really very nice. And it has a computer lab. It has a fitness room. Again, the management office is there. There's a pool behind it. You can't see the pool from this shot, along with a pool deck. So it really does provide a nice amenity for the residents in the development. Next, I'll talk about the people initiatives. And again, this really is the heart and soul of what we do and why we do it, is really trying to improve the lives of the folks that were living in the former public housing location and those folks that will be moving into the complex. All the residents were provided case management and relocation support. And the idea is to really help them become more economically stable and self-sufficient, to help out with the school-aged children, and to ensure children, youth, and adults are mentally and physically healthy. Some of the highlights: there currently are 368 families out of 414 relocated families, and the case management is obviously optional, and most people choose to be a part of it, but for various reasons, some people choose not to, or some folks move away or just get totally disconnected from the process. Another statistic that was a lot better before COVID, but of the work-able residents, 40% are currently employed. It was up to 56% prior to the pandemic. And I don't remember for sure, but I want to say the percentage prior to this initiative was in the low 20s. So a significant increase in providing employment opportunities, and most of that is through the work of Urban Strategies and their case managers. 39 families have moved back into phase one. Phase one is 114 units. That's around 34%. That's actually a fairly high percentage compared to many of the other Hope 6 developments that have taken place over the course of time. And I always like to emphasize and mention to people there's this big misconception about folks not being able to return. And it is truly a misconception. And over half of these units in Foote Park will be subsidized and available to residents. So literally, we can provide a unit for every family that moved out of the old Foote homes if they choose to move back into the community. Phase two was recently completed and is being leased, and 8 families have moved back. 21 high school seniors that were actually residents of Foote homes graduated from primarily BTW for some other schools the past school year. Obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted everybody, but as many news articles and reports have demonstrated, the impact on communities of color, people of color, lower income families has even been more devastating. So some of the things that Urban Strategy did were fairly basic, and a lot of things that frankly, a lot of us take for granted. And that's providing the families with cleaning supplies and technology and internet access. And of course, in today's environment with virtual learning and virtual education through the public school systems, technology and internet access is a huge factor. The Women's Foundation, which is one of our partners, hosted a laptop program and provided all of the graduating high school students at BTW with laptops and 1 year worth of internet services. And we have a number of, too many to name, a number of nonprofit and social service organizations that are partnered with Urban Strategies and Women's Foundations to provide various services to the families that were located that were living in Foote homes that were relocated. The third component is the neighborhood component of the project. And we had several major projects that were proposed to HUD under the grant. We have a family resource center that was actually completed. It was the first thing completed, and it's located in BTW, which is in the heart of the neighborhood. Unfortunately, with schools being closed, everything around the school building has to comply with the timetable of Shelby County Schools. So the Family Resource Center, which was a great place for people to get resources around employment opportunities, educational opportunities, gathering places, was used quite frequently. Had a staff of, I think, 3 people. All that has been temporarily shut down because we don't have access to the school building. Park improvements, early on, we made some improvements, or the city made improvements rather, to Army Navy Park, which is at G. Patterson and 2nd. The bigger park that was improved is Ellie Brown Park, and I have a picture of that coming up soon. That's right on the eastern edge of the Foote Homes development site, and it's adjacent to the Claiborne Point at Heritage Landing Hope 6 site. We have a commercial facade program, and I'll talk about all these a little bit more in detail in the upcoming slides. A homeowner minor repair program. We have a early childhood education center that's in the pre-development. Girls Incorporated, which is planning a center in South City, is in pre-development. They currently were operating programs, I should say, out of BTW, and they're looking to add a brand new center. Will be renovated structure, but a brand new center. And then public art, we have various sites for public art, primarily in the green space. And our big ambition and aspiration was a grocery store. We are in the food desert, and we work, frankly, tirelessly talking to all of the major grocery store operators, all of the local, both national and local. And we were unable to find an operator and unable to find a site that was suitable even to some of the operators that expressed a modest amount of interest. So after really a couple of years of working at that, we had to withdraw that and reprogram those funds into the other programs and back into housing. So the public art, the big installation will be a work of art created by local artist Terry Land, and you can see the renderings on the right. And it's, he met with the community stakeholders and residents, and there was this selection team comprised of various members of the community and stakeholders. And they went through a competitive process. Terry was selected, and his artwork will have a connection to the history of the neighborhood and also have a connection to the Memphis Heritage Trail, which is another part of the work that HCD is doing on the southern end of downtown and into South Memphis. And it's important, and it was important to engage the residents, and they were very, very active, involved in this process. We have a homeowner minor repair program. One of the things that we heard frequently, and this actually goes back through many of the Hope 6 developments, is people that lived in the neighborhood and that were homeowners, they said, all of the improvements are for rental housing. And typically that was correct. The housing program was a public housing replacement program. So when Choice came out with the neighborhood component, we saw this as an opportunity to create a program that would help homeowners. So under this program, qualified homeowners that live in the neighborhood are able to get a forgivable loan of up to $15,000 to make improvements to the exteriors of their homes. It is forgivable at a rate of 20% per year. So if they remain in the house for 5 years, it's totally forgiven. If they decide to move and sell before that time, then the portion that is not forgiven, they will have to repay. The interesting thing about that, at least to me, is we're working only on the exterior, and that's actually a HUD requirement. If we were to go into the inside of a person's home, that would trigger HUD's affordability requirements, which would require restrictions, I should say, on who the homeowner could eventually sell their homes to if they were to sell. So we didn't think that was reasonable, and we didn't want to put that burden on people. So we chose the viable option, the only viable option we had to work with these homeowners, and that's to work on the exterior. To date, 9 houses have been repaired with a total investment of over $80,000. A couple of pictures here, you can see some before and afters of a particular house. And here's another couple of houses where you can see the before and after. The idea here was, number one, to provide a benefit to homeowners, many of whom have lived in the neighborhood for a period of time and want to remain in the neighborhood, as well as to help aesthetically the streetscapes of the neighborhood as we try to revitalize, rebuild an entire community. Another program is we call the Good Neighbor program. It's actually a partnership with the Downtown Memphis Commission. And this is also a grant program where business owners can get a grant for up to $50,000 to improve the exteriors of their buildings. There was a match. They had to match it with a 25% investment. After COVID hit and that became more of a challenge, we talked to HUD and DMC and we reduced it to 10%. So to date, we've had 8 businesses that have been approved to participate in the program with an investment of over $360,000. So here's an example. This is the Memphis Magnetic, which is a recording studio that a lot of people don't realize exists there. I mean, I'm assuming, trying to be fairly low key, but you can see a dramatic difference in the building when they acquired it and the way it looks today. And this is another organization, Off the Wall, which I actually had not heard of. It's an arts group on Walnut. And again, you can see a fairly dramatic difference in the exterior of that building compared to what the improvements they were able to make. The NAACP office, which has been there forever, is a participant, and they're actually just getting started. So the picture on the right is a rendering of what it will look like. And of course, that's a significant improvement to the condition and the appearance of that building. And then the last one also is a work in progress. It's the old Paradise Center, or the Club Paradise, if you've been around Memphis as long as I have and know about the Club Paradise. And you can see it's, again, making a dramatic transformation. It's a venue, community venue. They do have musical events there, community events. We've had a couple of events there in a day where we've been able to bring people in for various programs. I know Paul and his group have used it a number of times. So it's a great resource. And you can see that's a significant transformation from the way it looks now compared to how they are envisioning it to look in the future. And then we have actually 2 empty school buildings in our neighborhood. There were 3. MLK Transition Academy, which was the old Porter Junior High School, again, if you've been around as long as I have, Georgia Avenue Elementary, and then Vance Middle School. SCS has subsequently demolished Vance, so it's just a vacant lot. So we're working to redevelop the old MLK Transition Academy into a multi-tenant building. It will be anchored by the Early Childhood Education Center. It's in pre-development stages. It'll be about an $18 million project, and it'll be about 90,000 square feet of space, with about 25% of that will be used for the Early Childhood Education Center. But the idea is to create a space that will have commercial space and hopefully some office tenants and a small amount of retail. We don't expect a lot of retail. And also provide, which we've gotten a lot of interest from various social service providers and other nonprofits that will be operating in the community and also operating in the broader Memphis city itself. And also embrace the neighborhood with history and promote neighborhood pride. One of our concepts, which we will be unveiling hopefully soon, is the South Memphis Museum and Cultural Center, which will be a facility that will display and archive and maintain all of the significant history. I mean, the list of organizations and individuals that came out of this neighborhood throughout the history of the city is really phenomenal. And it's really something we need to capture and celebrate and honor their legacies, as well as reserve for future generations that will be living in the neighborhood, as well as the greater community, in terms of the contributions that they all made locally as well as nationally. And then the last one is Girls Incorporated. That's a rendering of their proposed building. That's Georgia Avenue actually has 3 buildings. This is one of the smaller of the 3. And it'll be a great space for Girls Inc. It's right there at Georgia and Mississippi, across from BTW. And their programming is for girls ages 6 to 18. They will have an emphasis on STEM, and they will have dedicated programming also for Opportunity Youth. So this project is hopefully we'll get started. Both of the school buildings will get started in 2021, and hopefully have them up and running by maybe the end of 2022 or early 2023. And you can see to the top, you can see what the school building looks like now, right above the rendering. And this is a kind of an aerial rendering, and it's not 100% accurate because we did this early on, but you can see the green space, which is there. It is the park. The main difference is some of the housing building configurations and building types have changed in phase 2. And also you don't see the modern management office on this particular rendering, but everything else is pretty much holds true to the current design and the overall development on the east side of Danny Thomas. So that concludes our presentation.
That's great. Thank you. One quick thing is when you were talking about Club Paradise, I thought you were going to share some stories. Maybe anything you want to share?
Actually, that really predates me. My parents went to I will say my parents went to Club Paradise, and I remember my mom and dad, particularly my mom, putting on her finest, and she and my dad would go to hear, Duke Ellington and folks like that back in the 60s. It was the place to go, but I never went to the actual club myself.
Okay, well that's great though. I love this. We have tons of questions from people, so it's great. So again, if you're watching, you can comment on the article where this video is embedded on the Daily Memphian site. I did realize you do have to be a paid subscriber, and I know all of you are, so that shouldn't be a problem. But if you're not a paid subscriber, you can click on the bottom of the YouTube on the video you're watching right now, right? It'll pop up, it'll say YouTube. That'll take you over to the video on YouTube, and you can post a comment there, and you don't have to be a paid subscriber, but we really would like you to be a paid subscriber. Again, make your comments now, make your questions in the comments on either YouTube or the site. Let me do one last thing before we go to Q&A. I want to thank our last two sponsors, CBiz MHM, three, because I can't add, CBiz MHM, Grace St. Luke's Episcopal School, and AutoZone, and then we'll be right back with Q&A.
So, now we're expanding into 12 states, and I need to know if you can handle the climb.
From state and local taxes to whatever your business needs next. CBiz gives you trusted local advisors backed by specialists nationwide.
Grace St. Luke's Episcopal School is proud to sponsor the Daily Memphian's Developing Memphis seminar. For more information on how we serve our students and community, visit gslschool.org.
Here's to I can. Here's to we can. To it's on. To let's do this. And especially to I did it. To all of our hardworking DIYers across the country, you've got this. And we've always got you. Get in the zone. AutoZone.
Go.
All right. Again, thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to all of you for watching and for the many, many questions. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can. And I'm just going to kind of do them in no particular order, which may be a little difficult, but that's what we're going to have to live with. For Paul, for the Liberty Park Fairgrounds project, the sports complex. I mean, I know you've been asked a lot. Is that it is partly built for traveling, what I jokingly refer to as professional youth sports. It's a very big business and it's a revenue producer. But does that mean that people who just want to play a casual game of volleyball or kids and families who can't afford competitive soccer, will they have access to the facilities?
Yeah, so that's a question we talked about quite a bit. And one of the things I try to do is make it clear, it's not going to be a community center. So it's not going to be a space where you can just go pick up a ball and go play. However, we are working with the operator, which is going to be ESM, Eastern Sports Management. We're working with the operator to program times when they can be used for community use. So that means that different volleyball clubs and different groups, they will have opportunities to have programmed time in the space. However, it's not going to be free play. It will be organized.
Okay. I'm going to stay with you just for a second. What sort of community engagement, surveys, just getting the opinions of, I guess, maybe the broader Memphis community, but also the neighborhood. Orange Mound is right there. Lots of other neighborhoods. How much community engagement and surveying, for lack of a better word, was done?
Yeah, we did extensive surveying, extensive conversations, and we heard a lot of different things. We heard that point about ensuring that there's community use of the space. We also heard that people wanted the site to be, they were okay with it being for tourists, but they also wanted it to be for Memphians. So we tried to figure out how we can ensure that there are programmed elements that proved that Memphians were welcome. When we were in Orange Mound, and through our division, we spent a lot of time in Orange Mound because the primary thing that we heard there was, how can this help us with our immediate priority, which is historic Melrose and revitalizing that property. And so we've been doing some extensive work in that neighborhood just to try to figure out what an adaptive reuse strategy could look like. And there's more to come on that.
We go to you, Rick, with Poplar Plaza. One, I want to know if you found the statue. Did anyone text you when you made your call? Any updates on the missing statue?
No updates. I'm so disappointed, but I'm going to be optimistic. It came off the top of the Plaza Theater Tower, so it's about 10 feet tall.
Okay, all right, we'll stay positive. And again, if you can join late, we're looking for a statue. But staying with you, more seriously, questions about affordability with the housing that you're looking at. Will there be affordable housing? Will there be, is it still called Section 8? Can't remember what it is, but you know, I live in Crosstown. I'm obviously doing this from my apartment in Crosstown. There's mixed income built into the way places are rented. Will that be part of your project?
Well, it wouldn't be part of it in terms of the old Section 8. Now, the pilot itself requires for us to reach a vast populace, if you will, in terms of ability to pay. But if this helps, the smaller kind of efficiency type apartments would start around 1,200. We're not doing 3 bedrooms right now, so the 2-bedroom apartments, they would go for around 2,000 using round numbers.
And what sort of minority owned business requirements are you shooting for with, or levels are you shooting for? And is that part of the pilot requirement?
It is part of the pilot, and I'm a little bit cold. We got the pilot a few months ago, but there is a hurdle. And I want to say, gosh, I'm cautious here, but I want to say that it's right around $10 million of the cost that would go to minority-owned business. Okay.
I'll just go to you, Paul. For each of your projects, there were questions about affordability. And how are you the right one, Paul, or maybe Archie, one of you? But we'll just stick with the Fairgrounds, Liberty Park apartments there. Will they have affordable units? And how does that work technically? Is Section 8 even still a thing? And how does affordability work and the various programs come into play, both at the Fairgrounds specifically, but more broadly educate us on how that works?
Yeah, so I'll also let Archie chime in on it because he's the one that taught me. But what I'll say is at the Fairgrounds, the housing that we have talked about has been primarily around student housing, given the proximity to CBU. So it's not necessarily going to be the traditional affordable housing format. However, as a division, and one of my priorities is to think about how we can help with the housing needs in the area that's immediately adjacent, which is Beltline. And while we don't have the strategy mapped out yet in terms of how we actually bring those high quality affordable units to that area, that is something that we are looking to do. In terms of the broader landscape for affordable housing, Section 8, I think they call this housing choice voucher now, it is still a thing, but it's very, very stretched. And with that program, the federal government essentially pays all of the rent over and beyond the 30% that tenant can pay. And we have about 8,000 vouchers in the city of Memphis, but we have a waiting list of another 8,000. So all of those affordable housing programs are really, really stretched. So we know there's a need. And there are multiple ways to try to get at it, but we just need more developers that are willing to get into that game because it's not easy. It's complex. It takes a lot of hard work and time. And so, you know, our division, as well as other agencies like EDGE and MHA, Health, Educational, Housing and Facilities Board, and CRA, many other agencies are also working. We're all pulling in the same direction on that front.
Archie, to quote Paul Young, you have been in that game for quite some time. Give us, what is the lay of the land within the housing that's going in, that is in South City and going in there in terms of affordability, the mix of rental versus ownership and so on?
So as Paul said, Section 8 is still the technical term because Section 8 is the section in the Federal Register that is the program is under. But as Paul also said, we typically refer to as housing choice vouchers. It's still very much alive and well. Unfortunately, MHA has a waiting list for folks looking for vouchers of several thousand people. So as Paul said, the need is huge. In South City specifically, over 50% of our units will be associated with the housing choice voucher. And the rents are affordable from the standpoint of, if you have a voucher, you pay no more than 30% of your income, and the balance is paid by the federal government through the voucher. So the rents are still, they have to be based on market rates, and MHA actually sets the rent standards based on market for their rents. And those rents will range from $650 up to $1,200 for the larger units. But again, the individual home resident will only pay 30% of their income toward their rent.
I'll stay with you. Questions. It's obviously a grocery store has been discussed in downtown for as long as I've lived in Memphis, 25 years, and it's been talked about broadly. There was some hope, some conversation about it happening within the South City bounds. Is that off the table or on the table or what?
That's off the table. We, as I said in my presentation, and Paul was a part of many of these conversations. We spent literally 2 years, more than 2 years, talking to every national grocery store that had expressed any interest in Memphis or has a store in Memphis. Obviously, Kroger is the leading grocer. And we talked to, I think they're like 6 or 7 fairly substantial local operators. And none of them were willing to come into the neighborhood. We had a couple that had a little bit of interest, and then the issue was where were we located? And so you really had to match up that interest with available real estate. And the one site that we found to be the most desirable was actually acquired by another entity, and they are using it for a totally different purpose. So it's off the table. We had a timeline in terms of making it happen, because under the HUD grant, we do have spend down requirements. So if we couldn't meet a spend down requirement, we had to make a decision early on in the process so we could reprogram those funds to another use and still meet the spend down requirement for HUD. So that's off the table as relates to South City. Now, some operator comes to us and says, I want to do a grocery store. I know we would do all we could. I'm sure Paul and the city would do all they could to try to figure out a way to make it happen. But from our perspective with the C&I funds, it's no longer something that we are pursuing.
Okay. Is that you're nodding, Paul, that you would be, city from your seat would love to get a grocery store downtown if there's a way to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to build upon what Archie said. I mean, in terms of the South City development team, we are not seeking necessarily a grocery store. However, from a city perspective, we still would like to see a grocery store in that area. And we will continue to be open and continue to have conversations with groups that are willing to do that. We've also talked to DMC, Downtown Memphis Commission, about that as well.
Rick, do you obviously your property hosts a very big Kroger, it seems like one of the bigger in the city. Do you remember offhand? I'm putting you on the spot with these numbers, so I apologize. Give or take what that construction cost was to build the new Kroger?
$16 million.
16 million. I mean, it is an interesting, and it's a huge issue on a million levels. The cost of grocery stores. And the margins they operate on really generally shock people. It is not a wildly profitable business by any stretch. Let me stay with you, Rick. You mentioned moving tenants from that corner. I assume you're moving them within Poplar Plaza somewhere. You're not sending them to a competing property, I assume. So will there be new retail construction within your footprint to accommodate those moving buildings or businesses?
There will be, but it's interior build out. The only building structure that would be changing is up there on the corner. Now, we envision this to be phase one of something that does flow through the property over the next 8 or 10 years. But right now, that redevelopment area that we showed in the presentation is what we're focused on.
Yeah. Paul, back to you. All three of you, these projects, I mean, have different types of city financing, tax incentive financing. You talked about the tourism development zone, and someone is asking, do we really think that tourists are going to come to play at the sports facility there? I'm going to expand the question. So one, what is the study? What did your study show in terms of people coming from out of town? But also, am I right that a TDZ, there's no if there is more money spent within the TDZ zone, that's a good thing. And whether that is from out of town or that is people from East Memphis or from downtown, it's all about increasing the amount of spend, not necessarily that it has to be from out of town. Am I right about that?
That's correct. So the TDZ is just the name of the mechanism, and the reason that the state put the tool in place is because they want to grow tourism. And building an asset like a sports and events complex certainly does that. So if we build, even if we don't build, quite frankly, if we build the youth sports complex and we build a new place for people to spend money, all of those new taxes contribute to the growth in sales tax growth in that area. So whether they're coming from out of town or in town, any money spent within that zone increases that tax base. The other point that I would make with regards to the underlying premise of that question, which is there will be no tourism, so why build it? We're not thinking about the traditional tourists. We're thinking about regional sports. So people that are coming from Nashville or Missouri or Little Rock, we're thinking about the radius that's within driving radius of the city. So it's not one of those attractions where you're trying to get people to come from California, even though we may have some large events that may bring people from far away. The bulk of the activity in the space is going to be on regional sports. And those are the studies that we're saying is that we will continue to see people that have kids in youth sports travel for those purposes.
Yeah, and then for those people who maybe didn't have kids who, or don't have kids who are in those kind of more competitive leagues, the travel teams, it is a huge business. It is very expensive in some cases. It involves long weekend trips to, all around the region, driving distance, sometimes 2-day drives to play sports, stay in hotels. It is, again, I don't mean to not be objective in commenting on this project, but it is, if you're not familiar with it, it seems like madness until you go to one of these sporting events and see how many people have paid to be there and families and teams and so on. Let me switch to you, Archie. What, this may not even be a fair question, but someone asked about the status of, I should know this and I don't. Is there a TIF involved with South City? And what is the status on that? And Paul, maybe
there is no TIF involved with South City. So all of our funding was outlined in the slide, and we do get the benefit of the palette that's provided through the Health Education and Housing Facilities Board. But then we have obviously city funding as well, but there's no TIF funding at all. And we're also we will be tapping into new market tax credits for the MLK project. But no, we do not have a TIF district in South City.
Okay. A question for you again, Archie, that someone asked here. Can you speak to energy efficiency and sustainability in terms of the construction and development within South City?
So we meet the Enterprise Green Standards, which is a national standard established by the Enterprise Foundation that is both sustainable and energy efficient and sustainable. So we have to provide energy efficient appliances. There's certain construction materials that we stay away from in terms of sustainability and environmental friendliness. So we are meeting, and actually the neighborhood itself is a LEED neighborhood. It's one of the few LEED certified neighborhoods in the country, and that was done several years ago. So there are certain things we have to do from a neighborhood standpoint, but in terms of the actual construction, the Enterprise Green standards are very, very high, and those are the standards that we are meeting with all of the residential development.
Rick, similar question to you about construction now and how much the issues of sustainability, of efficiency come into play as you start planning for this.
Well, that would really be a good question for Danny Valley over at HBG. Danny, I know you're listening, so text me something, but we are certainly going to meet those standards. We're not quite down in those weeds yet. We're flying a little bit higher before we go to actual CDs on that. But it is a subject line of the conversation that will come in the next round, and we're going to lean very heavily towards those. We're going to exceed whatever the requirements are. How much we go above and beyond that is yet to be determined.
Okay. Let's see. We've got some unsolicited marketing advice for you here. This is for Paul. That Liberty Park needs outdoor. Oh wait, no. It needs a star. That there was a star in the Liberty Land logo, and that needs to be part of the branding for Liberty Park. So just get right on that.
All right, we'll take that into consideration.
Yeah. What sports though? I think there's some questions here about what sports. You said volleyball, indoor basketball, soccer, no football, no baseball?
No football or baseball, indoor sports. So it can and an indoor track. So it can accommodate wrestling, pickleball, basketball, volleyball, gymnastics, cheer. A lot of the traveling sports that many kids are active in today, including some of mine.
Yeah. Let's go back to construction. Rick, I'm curious for you as you guys look into this, look forward to, planning. Is your sense that, and this is true for all three of you really, but I'll just go with Rick here first. Construction costs, both the labor costs and material costs, are you projecting it to be lesser given there's a bit of a recession or more than a bit of a recession, and there's maybe more availability of labor and materials? I know, a year ago, when we did this, that was one of the biggest things that anybody doing development was talking about, was just, it was so difficult to find anyone to do the work. Material costs were really getting more and more expensive. What's it look like now?
Well, it's a very hard question to answer, and we get a mixed result of that. Some things are down, some things are up, some certain labor is more in demand. We think that it's going to trend and have some creep upwards in an overall aspect, but it's very difficult to say without going into any individual line item, if you will, how that particular substance is. And by the way, Danny did text me if I need to go back and read his answer.
Well, that's your architect, right, from HBJ.
Yes.
Well, what was the answer? And what was the question? I know I asked it, but I already forgot.
The answer, construction cost, he sent me several texts. Yes, energy efficient materials and sustainable design.
Okay. This is the advantage of live Zoom. It's the only advantage of live Zoom, because I hate Zoom. Paul, back to you. Someone here is asking about, or is this a question for Archie, about Whitehaven and your work in Whitehaven? That's you, Archie, right?
Oh, no, we're not doing any work in Whitehaven.
Okay, I'm sorry, Paul.
I think it's Rick. I mean, unless they want to know about what the city's doing in Whitehaven, I think Rick's property in Whitehaven.
Rick, you've got a property in Whitehaven. Sorry, everybody. There are a lot of questions. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them.
Yes, I briefly mentioned that. Whitehaven Plaza, about 30 acres. We call it Poplar Plaza's sister property. It was built by the same Goodwin family that built Poplar Plaza.
Okay, and what's the status on that again? Because people may have come in late, so just give us a quick update.
Sure. Well, we have two things going on out there. We are working with a medical user. I can't name them because the lease isn't signed,
Sure.
But we've already got some permits and stuff. 8,500 square foot space and a redevelopment of the range-facing end of the shopping center. That'll be all in north of a $3 million project. And then we are looking at a out parcel added to the Elvis Presley Boulevard side. Okay.
Paul, back to you on the fairgrounds. A number of questions I'll roll up as what sort of partnerships, if any, formal or informal, are there with CBU and with U of M? You talked about student housing being one of the primary users of the multifamily or of the apartments, but is that that's not CBU housing, it's just they plan to market it to CBU students?
Right. There's no formal partnership, although we have had discussions with the administration, and we continue to have conversations with all of the stakeholders that are surrounding the site. That's just a target population for the housing that's intended for that site.
For all of you, but I think it's particularly Archie and Paul, I cannot tell you how many questions there are about grocery stores. The grocery store, it is just amazing. And I think, Archie, you've lived this, as you said, for 2 years of talking to grocers and just even a limited service kind of smaller footprint grocery store, just you could not find the tenant. I don't mean to
let me make this what I found to be in a very fascinating situation that we discovered. So there's obviously great demand, as you pointed out, for a grocery store in downtown. Huge demand. It's been there for, as you said, decades. South City is a food desert. There's demand for grocery there. So from the grocery store's perspective, operator's perspective, they're looking at two, what they consider to be totally dramatically different markets. So the South City market and the groceries that those folks are going to be looking for, and the price points that they'll be looking for, and then the downtown market and the products and the goods they'll be looking for and the price points. So they said one of the challenges they had is they really wouldn't mind being close to South City, but they really want to serve the downtown consumer. And they couldn't figure out how they could set up merchandise the inventory to meet the demands of their perceptions of I guess I'm sure they had data and all kind of data to substantiate their market studies that the downtown residents wanted, and it just didn't align with what the studies say the South City residents wanted. So they said, we don't know how to merchandise to these two very significant populations. So that was at least one of the things that we were told by multiple operators, which I just found kind of interesting. I never thought about it. I never even thought about the grocery store business, really. But, I learned a lot about it and we talked to a lot of people. But I just found that to be a really interesting kind of, issue or dichotomy in terms of part of their challenge is we don't know how to merchandise to these two different demographics in the same building.
Yeah. Well, that is Memphis. So someday, I mean that. Someday I've lived in Midtown. Someday someone's going to figure that out. That's true of your Kroger serves a wide range of populations and demographics, right, Rick? It's, it's the city we are.
I agree.
And Paul, do you all, again, I'm going to stay on the grocery store thing. There's COVID has delayed it and changed it, but there is, there's billions of dollars in potential investment between Union Row, which has been renamed, between up in the Pinch District area, what Archie and others are doing in South City, merging effectively and sort of linking up South Front, South Main, the south end of downtown. Do you all, as the city, is it your role to are you looking to tell that story to grocers, or is that a role that either your group plays, or is that Edge, or is that the city in some fashion? Or does all that stuff just have to get developed and the demographics and the numbers prove out, and then a grocery store will happen?
I think that certainly our division tells that story. Downtown Memphis Commission tells that story. I think it's a couple of challenges. Some of it are market challenges, like what Archie talked about, but he also hit on another point, which is location, like what site and site availability, and then the cost in downtown Memphis for some of the properties. And you may have demolition that needs to be done, which takes that cost up. So it really comes down to having the right place for development. I do think that things are aligning. I think the market conversation is starting to become a non-issue, just given the population. And when you have something like the walk at Union Road, which is getting ready to take place, and the repopulation of South City with the units that are coming up, I think over the next couple of years, there will be a grocery store. It's just a question of where.
Last one, and then we will go. The Coliseum, I'll get hate mail if I don't ask you about the status. You did mention it very briefly in your presentation. It was really just like, if you blinked, what is the status and future of the Coliseum right now?
So the status is the same. Last time I was on the show, we talked about it, and our position on the Coliseum is that the future of the Coliseum is brighter with all of the things that we're planning. And if we can execute on the plans that we currently have, we believe that there's more opportunity for the Coliseum. I know the Coliseum Coalition has been planning different events, and we've been exchanging emails about some things that they would like to do. And, the city's continuing to work with them on those things in hopes that we can get somebody to bring that private investment that we want to see to make that project a reality.
All right, we will leave it there. Thanks to all three of you. It was really good. There are more questions, but we all got to move on. Normally, we would go upstairs and have a glass of wine at one of our seminars and eat cheese. We won't today, but you can do that at home. You're allowed. Thank you all. Thanks to our sponsors, Independent Bank, Bassberry and Sims, CBiz, MHM, Grace St. Luke's Episcopal School, and AutoZone. Again, our commercial real estate seminar is coming up on December 5th. You can register, pre-register, it's free, there's no charge. There's a link on it, the article in which this video is embedded on our site. You can also see our past small business seminar. And if you came in late on this, the whole video will be up there very soon if it's not already, but it will be up there. It's also on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. Please subscribe to the Daily Memphian, and we will see you in December at the Commercial Real Estate Seminar.